Okay, so let me start the presentation mode. And there, we'll get started.
All right, great. So I'm going to start us off. Welcome. Thanks for taking the time in the evening to join us. This is our informational webinar. I'm Kathleen, and I'm one of 5 of the trainers at the Gentle Passage Doula Collective. And this is an informational webinar to introduce you to our upcoming trainings that we have this fall. So we'll start off with a presentation and then follow up with some question and answer. And then, of course, if questions come up after that, feel free to reach out to us as those pop up as well. So we really want to respect time and be done at 6:30. If something comes to mind, don't hesitate to put it in the chat as well. And we'll be watching that throughout as well. So tonight,
Oh no, we're frozen.
community. I am.
We froze for a minute. Okay, so our weather's a little rainy here and my computer's saying unstable, so we'll do the best we can.
Oh, okay,
Hang in
no
there
worries.
if we freeze.
No worries. And so one of the things that we really have taken a look at in the last year in running these trainings, and we hitting our 3rd year of running death cafes as a collective, is that really people who are interested in end-of-life doula training, one thing that seems to rise to the surface over and over again is that it feels like there's a calling or they're drawn to the work. And for some, it's to be a part of a community. They're interested in end of life work. For some, it's to augment their work that they're already doing now or a shift to move into end of life work. To keep the stress down and invite more peace and comfort to people who are needing help at the end of life. And then also really taking a look at our own life and a desire to be purposefully involved in making sure that our wishes are carried out, as well as those who we're working with. So everybody comes, but there's a draw, and there's also a clear recognition that we are a death phobic, grief phobic culture. And so it's not something that makes really easy table talk with our friends. And so go ahead and change the slide. And so we're going to be talking about a training, and really what we're going to learn is that we offer support on how to show up for loved ones when they're dying, how to show up with people that we're working with, how to initiate those conversations and support anybody who's anticipating a loss. Maybe they've gotten a diagnosis, maybe they're going and experiencing a lot of grief because of a decline, and how to be the best caregiver. Or maybe it's an opportunity to really face our own mortality. And we're wanting to be able to be part of a network that's open and willing to discuss everything about death and dying. And then also to be able to get some mentorship, some wisdom, some resources, as we're in the midst of a paradigm shift that's happening, with the desire that people are expressing now of wanting to bring the death and dying back home and not making it such a medical event, but more of a community event. And I think a lot of us saw how important the process is to be a community event after COVID when that wasn't possible. And that's all the way through end of life services, people not being able to get together and actually have a celebration of life or an actual funeral together. So tonight, you'll meet us. We are missing one of our trainers, Colleen Hughes, who is away this week. But the desire is to get to know a little bit about us and our backgrounds and what we do, a bit about the history of end-of-life doulas and what it means to be an end-of-life doula, discussing the trends and shifts that we're seeing and learning from our graduates and working as end-of-life doulas. And why would you want to be a death doula now? And then learning a little bit more about the skills and qualities and what it looks like to work as an end of life doula, and also what you can expect from our training and our upcoming events, and how to sign up for the training, and what kind of support you get, and what kind of community we are cultivating at the Gentle Passage Doula Collective. So next slide. So this is us and our favorite photo. We are a community of dedicated end-of-life doulas. And we were brought together because we had a calling as well. And we're really interested in the highest quality training that is really practical and has the philosophy of practice, integrating the tools so that you feel like you have the tools and the skills to support the process for your work or your caregiving or facing your own mortality and working with those at end of life. And we've been together for over 3 years, and we've been providing the virtual online death cafes, which we would invite you to come at any time and also share with anyone that you think might benefit. We meet once a month on Fridays, the second Friday of each month at 12:30 Pacific Standard Time, and that's on our event page. We offer mentoring and services, and we also go out into the community and educate people about end of life and advocate for end of life doulas to be involved in the end of life process. And so our training is coming this next month for virtual training, and then our in-person training will be happening in October. We are educators, we are healthcare professionals, we're coaches, and we're end-of-life nurses. All of us have had experience working or volunteering with hospice. And our goal really is to have an end-of-life doula in every senior care facility, hospice, palliative care, so that really an end-of-life doula becomes a household name like a birth doula. That idea that there's well thought out plans, that it's an open discussion, that it actually is surrounded by loved ones, and that we really have those intimate conversations about what's most important to us at the end of life, and that we're getting the support and the care in the community. And so next slide. And this is a great quote by Ram Dass: "We're all just walking each other home." And really this encompasses the spirit that we have as end-of-life doulas to provide non-medical support and companionship to the dying person and their loved ones, their family members. I work directly with people who are facing death and their own mortality, and I also work with the families. And you'll see that we all do different kinds of work and are drawn to different things. But what I want you to be thinking about is that it can be far-reaching and encompassing the type of work that we do. Next slide. And I actually really like this slide that, I'm terrified of death, and then everybody hates me. And there's two truths that they say in life, is that you can count on, birth and death, and so one of the things that we see that causes a lot of needless suffering in our culture is not being willing to talk about death and dying. And I think something that drew me to the work with being an end-of-life doula had a lot to do with seeing a process go really negative in my personal life and a process going really positively. And what I noticed was the aftermath as a griever and somebody left behind, that my mourning and my bereavement process went a lot easier, and that I felt a lot more resolve by having a lot of conversations around death and dying um, with loved ones when it was absent otherwise. And so that's what we're hoping for other people, is that that we can have those conversations that are really scary, that we can share those skills and tools so that we have the courage to bring those up as an end of life doula, and that we can hold the space that it requires when there's internal conflict and there's fear and there's mixed messages that come up in our culture. And now I think I'm handing the next slide off to Kathy. Thank you for your attention.
So this is a great example that dying itself is a community event, not a medical one. Most people want to die at home. And one of the things that the General Passage Doula Collective is really committed to is the conscious living, conscious dying. Next slide. So the history of end-of-life doulas really goes way back to ancient Greek. And the word doula itself means a servant. And we have been serving women mostly, others at end of life in many different traditions throughout the world for a very long time. In the Civil War time was when things began to change and get more medicalized. And then in this past 20 years plus, in the 1990s, things began to shift in palliative care. And the mother of hospice was Cicely Saunders. And things began to shift in the mid 90s and in the early 2000s with Deanna Cochran, who started one of the first certified end of life doula programs, also because of experience with her mother. Another gentleman in the East Coast, I think Deanna's in Arizona, if I'm not mistaken, and still providing trainings as well. And on the East Coast, Henry, help me out with his last name.
Something Wilkes? No.
Briscoe Weiss.
Oh yeah, that's
There you
it.
go. Thank you. It's always a challenging one. On the East Coast, he also was a social worker. Deanna was a nurse and was with her mom. His was with his dad, and also his experience as a social worker for hospice. And he began '60s and early '70s. And he then developed his program as a certified end-of-life doula training through his work. And then Henry went on to be a co-founder of NEDA, which is the National End-of-Life Doula Alliance here in the United States. So they have been very proactive. But also the other thing is, through the last 50 years, there have been many people, Ernest Becker, who start bringing death to the forefront. Magori Anderson out of San Francisco about vigiling at end of life. There's also Frank, I almost had it right earlier, Oskensky, who talks about the 5 wishes. And there's been a number of doctors. I think, in fact, Maureen worked briefly with one doctor in Fresno. Was it Ira?
Baya.
Yeah. And so many of us have had our lives touched by many different professionals. I had a very long weekend about 25 years ago with Stephen and Dean Levine, and they were a great beginning about how important conscious living, conscious dying was. As a result, as late as 2019, NEDA only had 200 members, and by 2021, there's well over 1,000. And in those years, there was just a handful. And it has grown enormously in the last 4 years as we've gone through the pandemic and COVID. And then there's so many different other aspects to the end of life doula and the history. And they have all been threading together this beautiful tapestry, if you will. Becoming end of life doulas is now getting the same kind of respect that birth doulas did. Initially, they weren't, and from my experience 5 years ago, when I wanted to talk to hospice people about being an end of life doula and how I could be of assistance, they actually didn't want to talk to me. Today, that's a whole different situation. And people are looking at how can we work an end-of-life doula into our hospice program and offer that service. And other settings in our community here are very interested in us providing training. So next slide. So why do we have the death doulas now? We talked a little bit about the history of it, but more prominently is that the baby boomers, which now is being called the silver tsunami, because the folks that I served from the 90s on were a population of 32, 34 million. The baby boomers now are 76 million strong. And of course, we have lots of other family members in that process too. And we still have many of those greatest generations who are living in their 90s and early 100s who are also part of the dynamics here. But what's also important is that statistics state that 20% of people over the age of 65 do not have a loved one or family members or an individual. Time and again, I've come across several people whose durable power of attorney is either their attorney or their accountant. And it is that personal touch is not present. And this is why an end-of-life doula can be very helpful in providing support, comfort, companionship. The other biggest issue is caregiver shortage. It is enormous. I recently, last week, saw my son's cardiologist, and he actually came out of retirement because of physician shortage. So it's caregiver shortage as a person who is a nursing assistant, a person who's a nurse. A lot of hospitals are using agency travelers, and that's causing the cost of healthcare to rise. So there's a multiple layers of why death doulas are really beneficial at that time, especially since they're non-medical and non-judgmental. Next slide. The role of end-of-life doula is a varied one, because many people have particular niches that they prefer, such as being at the bedside or helping plan. Maureen, I'll just talk briefly, and Bonnie does too, really specializes in advanced care planning and getting your affairs in order. But it is non-medical support. It's holistic in nature. I'm a very hands-on end-of-life doula at the bedside, and also helping prepare folks. For instance, some of my clients I've had at the time, and this tells us about how difficult it is for people to talk about end of life. I have had 2 or 3 people now who only want to see me once a month because that's all that they can do. And in this time period, they've utilized that 1 hour a month by talking about unfinished business, which is a part of the end-of-life doula role when we talk about life reflections and reviews and also legacy. But holistic care is the different modalities within that is touch, is music, many different dynamics there. And I think one of the best things, there's many, is how personalized the care becomes. And it's not like the doctor sees you for 15 minutes and you're on your own, or even hospice sees you for an hour and then you're left with, what do I do now? So an end-of-life doula really provides a supportive companion like role for people, and helps diminish unnecessary fear and anxiety, and also trauma, because of the calming presence that an end-of-life doula can be. Advocacy is also an important one. Some individuals have a difficult time with being able to advocate. And so part of our role is helping folks empower their choices, what is meaningful, what gives their life joy, and helping guide folks through that can be very empowering and freeing for them. When we come to the idea about creating a peaceful process, it can be the environment, it can be our very calm demeanor, our very nature of being very accepting of what's happening in the here and now. There is such a tremendous amount of different things the end-of-life doula does. Some end-of-life doulas are physically doing personal care. Others don't do that. So there's a variety that we'll talk about later. Next slide, please. So the qualities and skills: having a heart-centered desire. And most of the folks that we've talked to that have reached out to us over the last 4 years have been saying, I feel this calling. I know I want to work with folks at end of life. And it is also their heartfelt desire to respond to the need of individuals. But some of the most important qualities, in my opinion, is the capacity and ability to listen deeply to what the individual is sharing and talking about. I think Maya Angelou had a quote and said, the greatest agony is an untold story. And so part of our job, and if you will, the journey with the individual, is to be able to listen to the story, to bear witness. Being present. When we talk about being present, that often is, we're not thinking about what just took place outside of the hour that we're spending or the 4 hours they're spending with an individual. We're not thinking about what's going to happen tomorrow or what I'm going to be fixing for dinner. We are wholly present in the moment with the individual and their loved ones. Oftentimes, it's not an individual that contacts us. It is a family member that is reaching out because they want to help their loved ones, but don't often know how. And that is part of the role as a doula, is that we model how to interact, how to care for, how to be with the person who is moving towards active dying. Compassion is probably at the heart of the work we do. I can't talk enough about compassion because a lot of folks don't know how to be compassionate or empathetic. And compassion is, kindness is what we all desire so much, especially at end of life. And the other thing is an end-of-life doula and skills that are really helpful is our resources, being resourceful. I like to call myself, especially since I'm also a social worker, is a bit of a yenta, a matchmaker of needs and resources, because a lot of times there is no cookie cutter way about navigating the healthcare system. And so our being able to provide resources and guidance and that listening are really important skills of an end-of-life doula. Next slide. Bonnie.
Thank you, Kathy. I want to talk a little bit about the benefits of being a doula. And there's so many benefits. You know, what we're talking about here is really just a few of them, but you find as you get into this work, you get more out of it, I think, than what you put into it. That's how it feels to me. So, but some of the benefits are that, you know, we work with people at one of the most vulnerable times of their life. A lot of times they are desperate for someone to help them figure out what their next steps are, because our healthcare system is so complicated and broken that people don't really know how to navigate it very well. And so very often that's what we're helping them do. We definitely make a positive difference in their lives. We hear that all the time from the people that we serve. They almost, it almost feels to me, especially in one of the clients I had recently, that it was like a lifeline for them. And so when people are just overwhelmed, sometimes we can come in and sort of calm things down, and that really makes a difference for them. The one thing for you to think about, though, too, is, and this is one of the things that was really attractive for me, is that you can have flexible hours as an end of life doula, and it really depends on what kind of work you're doing. Are you wanting to do this full-time or part-time? It takes a while to build up to a full-time position, but some people could get a full-time position working with another agency such as hospice. But what I find is I can work as much or as little as I want. So that was attractive to me. And then the other really big piece of this is, as you get into this and you start working with other people, and you really build up some wonderful connections in the community. And so to have those people in your back pocket and as resources that you can use can be really helpful. And I think the one of the advantages of our collective is that we keep our doulas connected with us, and so you have this group of doulas that you can use as resources. And so you'll find that each doula has different skills and different focuses that they want to take, and so you can learn what those are and kind of connect with those people. Next slide, please. So opportunities that you have, and I think you have to think about this. Do you want to do this? Do you want to set up your own business as a doula and hopefully develop that? Some people want to do that. Some people are looking for a position as a doula, and there are agencies that are hiring doulas, such as hospice or palliative care. Our goal is to have an end-of-life doula trained in every senior care community. So I really believe that more and more communities are going to be looking at hiring doulas, especially if there are communities where people die. And so I think that'll be important. You can work in different ways. You can be an independent contractor. You can work on retainer. You can charge hourly. All these things are kind of up in the air for you to think about how you want to work. You can job share. And that's one of the advantages of having the collective, is that if you are getting really busy, you have a couple of clients going on, you might want to job share your position with someone else so that you can get some support for yourself, and that you can make sure that you cover all the needs of the people that you take on as a doula. And the other thing about doula support is that it's in person, and so you really are working with people one-on-one. And we have the advantage, because this is not a regulated field right now, that you can spend as much time in the home or with your client as you are able to. You're not limited by a federal regulation that you can only spend 15 minutes or an hour with someone. You really, it's up to you how you want to do that. And I find that to be a little less restrictive than when I can only spend a certain amount of time with people. Can you advance the slide, please? So is this me?
Yes,
Yeah, it
this
is.
you.
Okay, so why work with us? One of the things that we did is when we were putting this program together is we've all come from different backgrounds and different programs that we used to become doulas, and we found that some programs were overwhelming overwhelming. They gave you so much information you couldn't assimilate it all, and some didn't give you enough. And so what we tried to do was really create a program that was practical by taking the things that you need to know, and that's what we give you in this training, is the things that you need to know to get started as a doula. Their training is immersive, so we hope that you get enmeshed in the training with us. And the people that are teaching you have education background. I personally was teaching in the School of Nursing at the University of Washington, and some of others of us have been doing that. I also spent a lot of my nursing career working in skilled nursing facilities, where I worked with people who were dying, and I purposely chose that program because I had a fear of death and I wanted to get to know and understand it. So that's why I went there to work, and it was one of the best things I ever did for myself personally. We are focused on community development, not just among our doula group, but we reach out into the community as well, and hopefully help people understand this process. And we have supportive learning in that we offer ongoing training. So we don't just give you the initial training, we give you some webinars. And I think Maureen's going to talk about that in a few minutes, but we have ongoing training that you can participate in. Next slide. So this is just a list of the content of what we cover in the training. We thought we'd just post this up here for you. So these are the overall topics. And I think you can see that it covers everything from teaching you about, what the scope and the legal aspects are around this program, what you can and cannot do. You'll hear a lot of us focusing on the fact that it's non-medical. You're not going in there and providing treatment or giving medications or that sort of thing. That's not what we do. We spend a lot of time just on teaching you how to interact with families and the client themselves. And until you go out and do it, or we do some simulation with that, you'll get more comfortable with it. And then we talk about the things that are important to the people that are going into the dying process and their families around managing pain and suffering, and how you can do that from a non-medical perspective, as well as the importance of the vigils and rituals that people might want. And we talk about, what happens after death, once that person dies. We don't just walk out and leave these families alone, but there's more training and things like that need to be done. So these are the general topics that we cover over a 14-hour training, 14 hours of training. Okay, so I'll pass this on.
Okay, now it's my turn. I'm Maureen, and I get the frequently asked questions today. So I'm going to start with that. And I think one of the most asked questions we've received as a doula group is, do I have to have a medical background to do this? I have no medical background. And the answer is absolutely not. You do not need a medical background. 3 of us in our collective are registered nurses. And, sometimes that's a bit of a hindrance, because it's been said throughout this training that we are non-medical. So coming in with a medical background can be a hindrance at times. I have to always remember, take off my nursing cap and put on my doula cap. And, knowing what to do medically and not being able to do it, sometimes, it took me a while to get used to that also, and to realize I wasn't there for that purpose. I was there to just be present and be there as a doula in a non-medical scope of practice. Another question we're getting, is it better to attend the training virtually or in person? And the answer is either. Whatever's best for you. Some of you are from different areas outside of the Seattle area. Right now, we're holding our in-person training in the greater Pacific Northwest. but we also have held virtual trainings. And one of my concerns, I will tell you, was that we could get the same sense of camaraderie and community, because our first in-person training, people really bonded and there was that connection. At the end of our virtual training, it happened to be that one of my college roommates was in there, and I said, you know, I was so concerned about the connection. And she said, Maureen, you don't understand. I feel like I can pick up the phone and call any one of the people that were on the training with me. And she said, even though we weren't in person, I felt a connection to them. And I would never hesitate to reach out to them about support or, you know, bouncing ideas off of them, things like that. So that really made me feel good. So I think it's really whatever works best for you. If you're in the area and can come, for our weekend training, that's great. If not, we do it for over an 8-week period for 2 hours once a week over 8 weeks. Can we make money on this? Bonnie really went over a lot of the ways that you can work as an end-of-life doula. I wouldn't quit your day job right off, because like anything, it takes time. You know, it's one thing if you go into a position where you're hired through a company, but it takes time when you're starting on your own to get to know people, to get people to like and trust you. So I would say it takes a minimum of a year or two to really establish those strong relationships, and where you can build that referral network and people know that they can count on you and trust you and that you're a good fit for what you want to do. And the last thing I wanted to address as a frequently asked question is, you know, if I take the training, do I have to work as a doula? I've had a number of people ask me that, and the answer is no. We've had a number of people come through our training that just wanted to take the training so they could better be there to honor and serve their loved ones, those that matter most to them, as they are approaching the end of their life. So we've had people that want to make a total 100% career of it, people that just want to supplement, and then people that just want to be there for those that matter most to them. We'll have time to answer more questions as we after we finish this. So the next steps: register today. We would love to have you join us and join in our training. Our next in-person training is October 28th and 29th here in the Seattle region. It's in Mukilteo, I believe. Our next online training starts, it's Wednesday evenings, September 13th through November 1st from 5:30 to 7:30 Pacific time. And our cost of our training is $999, but we are giving a discount. Here it says sign up today for a $200 discount, but I want to tell you, it's my father-in-law's 91st birthday, and he's out visiting us from Chicago. And I decided we should give a little extra. So today only, we're going to give $250 off till midnight tonight. But our here's some codes for in-person and online training. The way you would register is to go to our Gentle Passage Doula Ccollective.com and go /events. And all of our events and trainings are listed there. So you can very easily go on, find it, sign up, and enter the discount code. So our trainings are not just for the weekend, as many of the other doulas have stated tonight. We include a year membership to come to, you get 4 free of our monthly webinars, and then a discount for that for the rest of the year, a discount off the regular price. We also do monthly, so we do monthly coaching the first Tuesday of every month. That's because we want to build that community. We want to support you. We don't want to just train you and let you go and do what you know, just feel like you're on a lone person on an island out there. We want to surround you and be there to lift you up as you are starting in this business. It also includes, as I think Bonnie mentioned, monthly training webinars. So the training in person or the virtual training is what we feel you absolutely must need to know to start a doula business. And then every month, the third Tuesday of every month, we offer training to supplement ongoing education, what we feel is really good to know as a doula. And like I said, you get that as 4 of those as part of your membership. we really think the value we put down is $14.99, but we really think it is so much more because we just are so invested. And so I think the thing that sets us apart is our sense of community and really being there to support you and be with you on the journey and not to leave you alone. So we would really love for you to take advantage of my father-in-law's birthday present of $250 off our training tonight. So like I said, just go there. There was something else I was just thinking of saying, and I cannot remember it, so I'm sure it'll pop up before.
Maureen, did you mention about the monthly coaching?
The monthly coaching I did. And now thank you, Bonnie, for just reminding me. For those that do have a medical background and either a medical license or a certified nursing assistant, a social worker, any of those, we do offer 14 continuing education units through DSHS here in Washington State and another leading age, which is the overseer of long-term care communities. They are supporting our continuing education. So that's a big deal and something that we're very proud of. So I'm glad I remembered it before we moved on to the next part. So right now, thank you for coming. Thank you for spending the time. And we're really looking forward to answering questions that weren't answered or to go a little deeper in what questions you might have. So I'm going to stop sharing and we'll just open the floor to any questions you want to ask. I know there's been some here, but
Yeah, I answered Karen's question about being concerned about being on call for flexible hours. And I set dates and times to meet with people, but I want to open it up to you guys if you want to add to that.
Well, and that dovetails into my next question about what's typical for when people hire you. Are they in, in different states, the definition of hospice is the last 6 months, the last 2 months, it depends on the state. So the definition of what hospice is. So are you called in typically in the last week or in the last 6 months, or what's typical? I know that there's no normal, but what's
No typical either.
Mhm.
Kathleen, did you want to take that?
I'll start, and then if you guys jump in, because we all kind of do different things. So I work with both families and individuals, and I end up doing a lot more coaching rather than showing up and doing the doula work bedside. I have done that. But what I'm noticing is people really wanting to have access to somebody help coach them through about how to be the person who can do that.
Who can
And
do which?
so,
Who can do what? How to be the person that can do what's that?
Be bedside with the person or set up their death and dying process the way that they want it and ask for what they need and pull in the resources. So I have 2 people who are diagnosed with a terminal illness that I'm coaching, and I meet with one of them every other week, and I work with someone else just once a month. And then I've worked with family members, and so I have done weekly, I've done back-to-back days when people need something, and I've done one session with somebody. So and with a family, all on Zoom, all virtual. And that's just been the nature of what's worked in my work so far.
So are you self-employed, Kathleen, or are you working for someone?
Yeah, I'm self-employed.
And I can tell you that for me, I started out really doing physician visits with my clients where I go with them to the doctor. And so what I do is I meet with them before the appointment and we determine what they want to get out of the appointment, because doctors now only have about 15 minutes with their client. So we make a list of what they want to ask about. And so I kind of go, I usually go with them and I sit in the office with them, but they do all the talking. And so and I take notes. And so if they forget to ask something, I'll cue them and say, did you want to talk to the doctor about this? And then they'll have the conversation. And then we usually go for coffee afterwards, and we talk about, okay, what did you hear? This is what I heard. What are your next steps? And I've done that with several people, and they really like it. The doctors love it because it makes the visit more efficient. And so I found I started doing a lot of that. I recently got a client that I'm actually working with, but right now I did the intake and got them sort of connected with some resources. So now I'm only meeting with them as needed, as they determine the need is. So, but I find that I spend the most of my time really focusing on education because that's my background. So that's how I'm working. So I'll turn it over to somebody else.
Well, I'll jump in and then we'll leave the best for last because Kathy is our bedside doula that is really there. So I started my business before I knew about end of life doulas, working with advanced care planning, getting people's end of life plans in order. And so I do most of my work virtually, but I also do companioning. And, Karen, we can set our own hours. We can decide. There's so many different things that a doula can do. We can choose if we want to vigil and be at bedside, then we can. And my advice then is to get to know, as I can't remember exactly what the slide was, but get to know other doulas in your area that you are in alignment with and trust, so that if you are with someone that's actively dying and the family wants you there, you can pick up the phone and say, hey, can you help me on this? We just had a doula in our area that was working on a VSED case, voluntary stopping eating and drinking, and she had reached out. Who do you know and trust that I could reach out to help with this, because it's going to be very involved? So I had put it out there to a few people I know. So building those relationships is important. I've just talked to someone that is interviewing in another state to be a doula at a cemetery. So it wouldn't be around the clock, but they wanted to bring a death doula in to work with their clients at a cemetery. And that's a different role that I had never even thought of. I think is it the Congressional Cemetery in Washington, D.C. has a doula on staff there. And so there's so many different areas. It's sort of the sky's the limit of what you can think about and do. When I first learned about end of life doulas, I'm like, oh, I want to be at the bedside, because my background was as an oncology and hospice nurse. And I love being with the family and people at that time of life, but I had started this other business. So I thought, stay in my lane, but that doesn't mean I can't go help when needed. If one of my members, collective members, needs help, I'm happy to go and be there for a respite or something. Does that help, Karen?
Yeah, absolutely. So what I'm hearing is you can be a death doula in whatever is your lane. So my lane, I'm a certified cancer coach. So I'm comfortable talking to people about their emotions, about their mortality and the family dynamics and setting boundaries. And if there's something messy with a sibling or a child or whatever, I can help. That's my lane. So what I'm hearing you is you can pick your lane.
Yeah.
With what your specialty is. So you set up a website, and here I'm a death doula and I help people manage the emotions of the transition process, is what, like, where I'm feeling I would go, of the dynamics of the family. So the other question I had is that I didn't type in was, are you typically working with the person in transition? Are you more so working with the family?
Kathy.
I'm
Yes.
guessing it's the family.
It's exact. Actually, it's both, and in some cases, it's 3 generations. So that is a particularly special opportunity. Oftentimes, it is a family member who contacts me, but also it's individuals, especially the ones that I've talked about. That difficult family dynamics isn't a specialty of mine, and I recently had someone who passed away in June, and she did not want to have any of her siblings present during the active part of her dying, nor did she want them to be notified. And so we meet folks right where they are. And there's individuals that come with entire family dynamics that are not easy and could be from across the country. So I often will do care conference via Zoom, or when a family member has come from the East Coast and is present. I'll tell you just a really quick story. I had a 89-year-old lady, and her other children were on the East Coast and one daughter on the West Coast near her. And they were really not involved. And the daughter here was the one who was providing all the care. And then this client's daughter and granddaughter were present. And we all thought that this lady was actually going to pass away. But once she heard that her son was coming out, she actually stayed for almost 2 weeks before she passed away. And I think that she passed away when he was comfortable with her letting go, that innately she knew that. And this, a lot of our work is innate intuition and knowing and meeting people right where they are. So it is such a huge continuum. There's times that I've been an end-of-life doula, but the person has been unresponsive. And so I'm present in helping guide, support, companion the family members. And it's very small things at times, but sometimes it's the most meaningful things that we can do for individuals, because we are helping them become less fearful and have the process less dramatic. End-of-life care is the last adventure of life. It's a huge transition, and then very similar dynamics to birth doulas and end-of-life doulas is that transition period. And Kathleen can attest to that. When my doula group here was present several days before my husband passed away, and picking up on those little nuances of transitions. Does that help a little bit?
Yeah. I don't know why I'm here, but I'm just called to be here. And I have 2 other businesses that I'm very busy with right now. And I know that I could just step into this so easily, and like I'm just really called to it. And it doesn't even make sense actually, because I'm so busy. But I've been around 5 family members in their transition, and they were all positive transition experiences. So I know that I can help people transition and make it doesn't have to be awful.
I call it heart work because it's coming from our hearts.
Absolutely.
Does anybody else have any questions that we can help with? Tammy? Shelley?
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, thank you.
So I may not be able to do the training through this fall. Is there going to be ongoing training through next year, like 2024? I just kind of, yeah. Okay.
Yes, there will be.
Okay. Okay.
We just haven't set our schedule yet.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, and you can join us for our webinars, and you could come to our death cafes, and yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, we host a death cafe the second Friday of every month at 12:30 p.m. Pacific time, and that's virtual.
Yes.
So it'll be our 3-year anniversary on September 8th.
Yeah, very excited to know.
From all over the world attend.
Yeah, and we recently had, I think the last couple of months, or someone from Finland actually attended one of our webinars, and she got up at 3 a.m. to attend it.
Oh, wow.
You never know who and when you're going to touch. And that's kind of exciting and makes us energized and inspired to keep teaching And I think one of the other things that I would like to share is that we learn constantly from each experience that we are working with families and folks, individuals, always lots and lots of lessons.
Mm. Maureen, are you free to talk after this?
For about 2 minutes, we're heading out for my father-in-law's birthday dinner, but tomorrow, if not, but I can jump on for a minute. You know, I don't know, Tammy, do you have any questions?
I have a lot of questions, but I think I could save it to for the training.
Okay, great. Well, we are happy. You know, I want to say one of them, Karen, you had said, can you provide an expected income level? Does anyone want to touch that? Because we believe doulas should charge for their services and that that's okay. And that we all have to make a living. So, Kathleen, did you want to say something?
Yeah, because I can really relate to what Karen said. I'm really drawn to coaching, did grief coaching, and end of life coaching, health coaching, parent coaching. I have a background in education and I'm a dietitian. And I feel like it just augments what I've done, and I charge the exact same thing that I charge as a dietitian, that I charge as a coach, I charge the exact same thing I do for an hour. And just like somebody coming to me and saying, I can't afford it, I take insurance as a dietitian and I can't as a grief coach. So you just have those conversations about what the need is and what you're willing and able to do.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like it melds really nicely into a private practice if that's what you have already. Or
Can I ask what do you charge per hour?
Yeah, so for me, I
Mhm.
charge when I first set up an appointment, it's $175 for an hour, and
Mhm.
then to follow up, I charge $125, and I charge $80 for half an hour, and I charge $150 if somebody wants to check in with me every week. And that doesn't work so great with grief. What I encourage people to do if they're carrying a lot of grief is to give themselves an hour and then space it out and then fill it in with other support.
Mhm.
And then I also run groups because then I can bring the cost down and people aren't alone and they can learn a lot from each other. And I love running groups and I've done it my whole career. So it's not a support group, it's really a skill facilitated group. So yeah, so I keep the prices the same, and we're in Seattle. You know, if I was back home in Montana, I might not charge the same amount per hour. But yeah.
So I charge $75 an hour because I'm usually at the bedside. And when I go beyond 4-hour time frame, I charge $45. And it just depends on what this person's circumstances and their budget will allow. And also I do a sliding scale. Initially, I was not going to charge anybody anything, but that's not a good idea. So it's just a very individual.
Yeah.
Right.
Thank you to who's on the iPhone. We appreciate your kind words.
Kathleen, are you free to talk afterwards? Or anybody? Any of you since Maureen's busy?
I know I was going to say I could jump on for a couple minutes, but
no, it's okay. You need to spend time with your father-in-law. That's good.
it's not every day you turn 91. Only 4.7% of the American population will make it to that age, to over 90. We read.
Maureen, will I see you tomorrow at the
No,
event?
because that's when I'm taking them to the airport to go back to Chicago. So darn.
Okay.
Next month.
Yep. Okay.
But yeah, any of us can answer any questions. And also, if some of you have questions that are not getting answered, I'd put all the discount codes here in the chat. So, but also the info@gpdoulacollective.com. Feel free to reach out to us that way. And we can answer any questions or find a time to get in touch with you. Yeah. And there shouldn't be any issue getting that discount code, but if there is, just send us an email and we'll honor it, even if it's after the time, if you could not register because of an issue with our website. That happened only once, but
It can happen.
it did. Yeah. So just to let you know. Okay. Any more questions? Oh,
This is
yeah.
great.
See,
Thank
Kathleen
you.
put her phone number there, Karen.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
Great. Thanks, everybody, for coming.
Thank you so much,
Thank
ladies.
you.
Yeah.
We really
thank you for
appreciate it.
coming.
Thank you.
Okay. We look forward to seeing you again in the future.